Hello and welcome to Classical Stuff You Should Know, a podcast about philosophy and the ancient world. My name is Thomas Magby. I am joined as always by Mr. AJ Hannenberg.
Over here.
And Mr. Graham Donaldson.
Hi.
And I feel like there's no better kind of understanding of our podcast than that AJ is about to lead us on a very intellectual discussion about the soul, life. We're going to go for some Greek dialogue stuff. And Graham, just before this podcast, gave what he described as a robust belch.
Hey, I was trying to get it out of my system before we recorded. That is professionalism.
That's about as professional as we get. Yeah,
I feel like there's a lot of things. Like, for example, my book is Plato's Dialogues, but my bookmark is a little mushroom.
Little mushroom. That's nice. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, AJ, you're going to be leading us through this one, so take it away.
Okay, so I've been doing a small series on the dialogues of Plato, and unfortunately, the book club that I was doing it for already finished our final discussion before I could actually finish these episodes. But here we go. We're going to do one more, and this one is the dialogue Phaedo, spelled Phaedo, and it's a dialogue between two guys, one of whom was present at the execution of Socrates. And so he is going to describe what happened as they talked that morning and they were hanging out with Socrates. So this comes, I forgot to open the rest of my notes. This comes before, so Socrates has been condemned to death from the last one, right? I think that was an apology. I think you talked about that one.
Apology is a trial, and then credo is when he's in jail.
Yeah, and so Phaedo is the day of his death, and his execution was postponed for a while because they were right around a religious ceremony, which is when the ship from Delos is like finally seen, they're not allowed to do anything until it arrives, and so it's put off for a little while. So the ship has landed, that festival is over, today is the day. The people who have condemned him to death have pretty much said, like, it's gonna happen, you need to prepare yourself. And so Socrates is hanging out in jail with a bunch of his buddies who are allowed to visit him. He doesn't have to be alone. And so his wife, Xantippe, who was there, is just having a total conniption fit. And so he's like, would someone please take her home and like get her out of here? She's just causing trouble and doesn't need to be here. So they're chatting, and one of the things that Socrates has been doing recently is composing little verses. He's taking Aesop's fables and turning them into little songs because he's always had a dream, and in his dreams, the gods tell him, cultivate and make music. And he's like, I've always thought that was philosophy,
but
I'm not entirely sure, and so I'm gonna give this whole composing things a little try. Right? We'll see how it goes. So all of his buddies are talking to him.
Do we get examples of some of those songs?
No, sadly we don't. So then he's talking about this other philosopher, and he says he should follow me quickly into death. Like, go advise him after I leave that he should hurry to death as quickly as they can. And everyone around is like, What are you talking about? Yeah. Like, you want to hurry to death? Can you please explain this to us? And he says, yes. And he gives his first big postulate, which is that any man who has the spirit of philosophy should be willing to die. You should want to die and desire death, but you can't commit suicide. That's unlawful. So no suicide. All right. Can you guys got eyes on the bell? Can you grab me that bell right there?
Yeah, for sure. Gotcha.
Okay, so I want to do a little bit of quiz show if I can. Yeah. First question is, why is it unlawful to kill oneself?
Do you know the answer to this one, Graham?
I mean, I know our theological reason why it's unlawful.
But you're saying, like, for Socrates in his time, why would it be unlawful?
Sure. I mean, you guys can give both. Like, if either of you can guess the thing that he said, you'll get a point.
For why he shouldn't kill himself?
Yeah.
It's dishonorable. It's going to bring shame to his name and to all his family.
Okay. Shame?
You got responsibilities. Your kids need you to raise them.
0-0.
Oh.
Okay, so neither of you got it. The reason he says is because, look, the gods are our keepers. We are their possessions. And so we do not have the right to dispose of ourselves, right? And I think this is actually probably still the theological stance, right? Correct?
Yep. God made you, and you don't have the right to kill yourself.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, how would you feel if you owned an ox and the ox didn't like his life and decided to off himself? Well, his life doesn't belong to himself. His life belongs to you. Yeah. And so we are the possession of the gods, and it is unlawful to do such a thing. Would you guys still hold this position?
Sure.
You guys agree? This is the reason why suicide equals bad?
If my pepper plant just decided to kill itself and not produce peppers, I'd be upset.
Sure. Okay.
I own that. I cultivated that pepper plant.
That's fair. Okay.
Do you guys say that this is, I guess, a side conversation. would you guys apply this to everything? Because there are times in scriptures when people commit suicide and say, if I was a commander, to fall on my sword or to run on one sword. This happens all the time in the Old Testament. It happens also
Sure, but
in
it's not-
like Roman wars.
It's not presented as like a
This is a good
as
thing
a
to do.
positive thing.
Yeah.
Saul kills himself, but it's
also
not
not-
like
It's not commanded as
it's
something.
not commanded by God.
Yeah.
Okay. That wasn't the discussion I wanted to get
Sure,
into. Just,
yeah.
you know.
Yes, the Roman commander falling on a sword. Yeah, I mean, as opposed to, well, they're usually doing it because society is sort of expecting it of them, right? So in that sense, they're like upholding something, as opposed to getting out of something.
Yeah.
But anyway,
It's different than the like despair leading to suicide, right?
Yeah. Okay. So then they all say, like, so we don't have the right to do this. And he says, but we should still desire death. And so his followers say, okay, you're not allowed to kill yourself, but you should still desire death. If the gods are our masters and they're great and good, why shouldn't we want to stay with them as long as possible? And here you are, like hurrying off to death. Okay. Any guesses on what his answer are? Why hurry to death and not stay with your
Didn't you just
your
give us one
masters,
about
the gods?
like your senses lead you astray, and so you get to escape those senses and get closer to true knowledge?
Okay.
yeah, in death you're free from pain and suffering, and you are just you get to exist in the realm of pure thought. And by existing in the realm of pure thought, you can like engage in philosophical leisure all day long.
Okay, so point for both of you. You sort of
Yeah.
skipped ahead. He does give two other smaller answers, but that's, again, going to be his ultimate answer. His other quick answers are, number one, I believe I'm going to other gods who are just as good, right? They're gods of the underworld, and I'll be probably able to have closer communion with them. And also because there's other men down there who are also very good, right? And I believe they're better than the ones I'm leaving behind. And I don't know why the people in the place weren't like, bro, we're right here.
Yeah,
like,
seriously, yeah.
He's like, I think I'm going to go to better people than I currently know. And that's kind of an insult
Standing
to his
around.
friends, but nobody said anything.
Gary, oh man,
Somebody farted, and I think it was you.
So the place he describes himself going, the underworld, like that's where is he? In his conception, where is he going?
The underworld. And what's funny is I think he actually talks a little bit about this. We'll actually have a pretty specific description of the underworld. This is one of the only he does this here, and I think he also does it in the Republic, where he kind of gives us a vision of what the underworld's going to look like.
But this is not like the place heroes go, or I guess this is. It's just
think
the generic place.
Probably
everyone ends up. Okay,
yes.
got it,
So
yeah.
we'll talk about where everyone kind of ends up after death in a minute. But
okay.
he says, I think I'm going to better people and a better set of gods, and that's going to be awesome. And all of his followers kind of make a joke about like, won't everyone think it's hilarious when philosophers are desiring death? And he's like, yeah, haha, that's kind of funny, because everyone sort of says that about philosophers anyway. They'd rather be dead.
Wow.
So then they kind of ask why, and he says, okay, we can all agree that death exists. And they're like, yes. And he says, it is the separation of soul and body. Philosophers shouldn't care for the pleasures of the body, correct? Right? Only for the soul, which is their sole concern. Hey, he would. I actually kind of giggled to myself as I wrote that note. I was like, soul, but they won't see the spelling difference. He would want to get away from the body and turn to the soul as much as he can. The body itself is no help in gaining knowledge. The eyes and the senses are inaccurate, this is a quote, inaccurate witnesses. True existence is itself revealed in thought, if at all, so the philosopher should flee from the body, which is a hindrance. The essence of things is perceived by the mind. Absolute justice, beauty, etc. can never be seen by the eyes, but must be reached through thought alone. And the body is just a hindrance. So after your episode, which for our listener would have been last week, he was talking about, so what can you recapitulate what Aristotle's view is? How do we come to knowledge?
You have a number of experiences. You experience lots of things. And as you experience things in the same category, you can make generalized statements about those categories. And as you make enough generalized statements about categories, you can understand the art of things. And then if you sort of acquiring the art of different categories is the path to wisdom, generally speaking.
Yes.
That's sort of, yeah.
Okay, so see stuff, experience
But it's
stuff.
through experiences and your senses and Aristotle starts off metaphysics by saying, like, aren't the eyes awesome? The eyes are awesome.
Yeah.
Eyes are great.
Yeah, which I feel like is actually almost a direct response to the quote I'm
this.
about
Yeah.
to read you.
Yeah.
So he's just finished talking about how pleasures don't really help. And he says, the thought is best when the mind is gathered into herself, and none of these things trouble her, neither sounds, nor sights, nor pain, nor any pleasure, when she takes leave of the body and has as little as possible to do with it, and when she has no bodily sense or desire, but is aspiring after true being. Okay, and then he kind of asks a couple questions. He says, well, but there is another thing, Simmias. Is there or is there not an absolute justice? And Simmias says, well, assuredly there is. And an absolute beauty and absolute good? Well, of course. But did you ever behold any of them with your eyes? And he goes, no. Certainly not. And he says, or did you ever reach them with any other bodily sense? And I speak not of these alone, but of absolute greatness and health and strength, and of the essence or true nature of everything. Has the reality of them ever been perceived by you through your bodily organs? Or rather, is not the nearest approach to knowledge of their several natures made by him who so orders his intellectual vision as to have the most exact conception of the essence of each thing he considers? And that's the quote that seems like Aristotle had just read that and then wrote his thing.
Like,
all men want to see, and aren't the eyes great?
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't help but think of this exact passage when you were reading that. So I originally hadn't prepared that for today, but it seems to fit.
Sure.
And so he says, and he attains to the purest knowledge of them who goes to each with the mind alone, not introducing or intruding in the act of thought, sight, or any other sense together with reason, but with the very light of the mind in her own clearness searches into the very truth of each. He who has got rid, as far as he can, of eyes and ears, and so to speak, of the whole body. These being, in his opinion, distracting elements, which when they infect the soul, hinder her from inquiring truth and knowledge. Who, if not he, is likely to attain to the knowledge of true being? And Simmias says, what you say has a wonderful truth in it, Socrates. And so basically, when the soul is infected with the evils of the body, our desire for philosophy is not satisfied, nor is the desire of truth, until we can be rid of it.
So just body bad, mind good.
Body bad, mind good. The body is the source of all sorts of evils, and so the soul needs to perceive things in themselves. And if that's what we desire, is the truth of things, and the body is only a hindrance, then we should be rid of it, right?
So you hate this. You totally disagree with this.
Yeah, I think it's really dumb.
Okay, cool.
What do you guys think?
I like bodies.
Yeah. It's good to be alive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like he is entirely skipping that he has any notion of essence or any knowledge of any of these ideas. And so, it has to come from his eyes at some point. So maybe if he said, look, you need some experience, but by the time you're 10, you've seen about everything worth seeing. And after that, thought takes over. Yeah. But he is saying nothing. No eyes, no sense experience. You have to simply go through your mind alone, which to me sounds only like silliness. It's like trying to have a factory run with no materials put into it. Like, the factory works, it's great, but we'll have no materials here, right? Mm-hmm. The factory runs best when it runs on its own. So that seems ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
Okay. So he says the separation of soul and body is the sole concern for philosophers. It'd be silly for them who are living as nearly to dead as possible to get scared when it finally comes upon them, right? If they're desiring to be separated from their body and they're getting as close to that as they can, it'd be stupid to freak out when death finally comes near, right? They'd be clearly lovers of the body and not of wisdom. He even says that the true virtues themselves belong only to true philosophers, these people who desire death. And I want to get your opinion on this one. He says, courage, most men only have courage because they are afraid of something else, right? We risk death because we are afraid of tyranny or of the deaths of our family or
poverty or
taking of our possessions,
yeah.
right? So he says, really, you only have courage when you lack courage. And the same is true of temperance. We have certain pleasures that we love, right? Being able to take a walk and enjoy a sunny day. And that's why we avoid too much drinking or heroin or, whatever it is, because we want to preserve some pleasures, so we avoid others, which is to have temperance, we must have lack of temperance. We are still conquered by fear and by pleasure in both of those scenarios. He says only the philosopher can have real
temperance
virtue because I'm not conquered by any other fear, right? If I'm separated from the body and it's not pleasures that I care about, then I can have virtue in its purest form.
Right. I mean, these are the parts of Plato we make fun of, right? Like only the philosophers are the real humans. They're the only ones who are really brave or really temperate or really cool.
The problem is this one kind of makes sense. That like little bit about virtue.
Well, that's like a weird like psychologizing of why a person is courageous. Is it possible for someone to have courage without fear of something else? Sure. Like, why can it not just be the thing I'm courageous in regards to is whatever fear is in front of me?
Is it weird to say, like, I'm courageous because I'm scared of my family getting hurt?
Is that
Like,
even the right word
is that
for
a
it?
fear?
Right.
Well,
Or is
that's
that a lack of courage? It's not a lack of courage. It's almost a desire for justice. You're courageous so that a just thing can happen, or so to keep an unjust thing from happening. It doesn't seem like to be courageous. You lack courage somewhere else. You're courageous because you also have. Because you don't want injustice to happen.
my thought. I wonder if courage can even exist without fear. Courage, I think, by definition, is acting when there is something to be feared, right? If I'm
Yeah.
not afraid of anything, it's not really courage. I'm just like picking up
yeah.
takeout food. Like, if I'm not afraid of death and I go out to fight, am I really being courageous? I think courage, like, isn't courage like it necessitates fear, or fear is necessary for the very courage for
Yeah,
courage
you're
to
like-
exist at all.
But you're overcoming that fear to then do the courageous thing, right?
Exactly.
So, but not, are you then saying that you also need to be scared of something else? There's some other fear motivating me to be courageous? The one,
That I don't agree with. I don't think that you are motivated by fear to be courageous. You could be motivated by
Anything,
Anything.
right?
You can be motivated by justice. You can be motivated by,
Sure, but the thing you are doing, I think, has to be a fearful thing, right? If I'm motivated by justice to do something in which I must be courageous, the thing that I'm doing must be a thing I would naturally be afraid of.
Yeah.
Correct?
This is again letting the fire under me to continue to. I have this idea of doing the Joseph Pieper book on the four cardinal virtues and and looking at all the in-depth definitions of all these virtues, and now it's like I'm trying to remember all the courage stuff, but I can't.
Yeah.
So I'll have to do an
Well, I mean,
episode
doesn't
on it.
Aristotle talk about all this stuff too?
Yeah, and
Like,
that's
he
why
gives definitions
Joseph
of
Pieper
them.
is basically just like Aristotle footnotes.
yeah,
So
sure.
Yeah. I feel like Aristotle would be easier to read.
but maybe
Is that fair? I feel like
Man.
Pieper's hard to read.
It's more condensed than this Aristotle book you
yes,
have, right? Yeah.
but Aristotle's pretty great. I love me some Aristotle.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why everyone all the way up into the Middle Ages called him the philosopher.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he says this thing, and he's like, right, I've been living towards death. Only we can have real virtues. It'd be silly of me to run from it. And then his followers ask the next logical question. Can you guess?
No.
Are you looking forward to death? No.
It's what if the soul doesn't live on?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So like, what if your soul just
What if you're
scatters?
wrong? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What if you're wrong and the soul doesn't live forever and it's just gone in the wind? Right?
Yeah.
So the same fear a lot of people have now, right? That if I die, what if my soul just
It's
disappears?
just black. It's just emptiness.
Yeah. Oh, so did you have you guys ever seen the Mike Tyson interview where he's talking to a 13-year-old girl and she's like, I'm wondering about like what your legacy is going to be. And he's like, we don't have any legacy. There's nothing after death. I'm just going to be dirt. Like there's nothing.
Oh,
It's all just hubris. So like, I just like nothing after it. It's just darkness. There's no such thing as legacy. That's what people talk about. I don't believe in that. So this poor 13-year-old girl
Yeah.
is getting a lesson in like nihilism from Mike
boxer.
Tyson.
That's tough.
So he's got that fear, obviously.
sure.
Did you watch the fight?
I didn't the day of. I kind of tried, but Netflix wasn't loading, and so I watched like just the last bit of it. And
Do you think he pulled his punches? Do you think he threw the fight?
man, I don't know. It looked. I feel like Mike Tyson should have just trounced.
There was a moment
Right.
where I was watching this. I was watching the fight. I know we should move on, but there was a moment where I was watching the fight, and I was like, "What are we doing?" Like, he looked
Right.
like an old man at some point. He was like crying, and he wasn't
Really?
crying, but he was like, he was clearly pained in the 8th round, going into the last round, the 9th round, and I just saw him, and I was like, "We're just watching like a 26-year-old beating on a almost 60-year-old man. This is kind of." It's like, and then I went and toured the Colosseum in Rome. So
Terrible.
Okay, so Socrates responds and says the soul must be immortal. There are two reasons he gives for this. We can play quiz show on this but I feel like these are tougher to get.
I feel like Graham knows them like offhand. I bet you could name both of them right
do you
now.
know either?
Why the soul must be immortal?
Yeah.
Because it learns? I can't remember.
That's close.
Yeah,
That's close to
something
one.
like that.
I'll give you half a point.
All right, cool.
Is there something about like motion, or we're not doing the weird element stuff where like fire in the body is the soul, whatever your weird episodes from before.
Oh, I think those were Aristotle.
Were they?
Those
Okay.
are
Aristotle's
De Anima.
De
Anima,
Anima,
that's
yeah,
what
like
it was,
what
yeah.
the soul is, and
That
it's
was
just like
resonance.
That was a
moving
trip.
numbers.
Yeah.
And,
I remember those. Yeah.
yeah, that was good. That was a whole lot of not all of Aristotle is
Top tier.
pure
Yeah,
gold.
yeah, sure.
So he says there's two reasons. One, and this is one we discussed in a previous episode of mine, is the doctrine of recollection, right? We don't learn things, we
remember
simply
them.
remember them. I think it was maybe the last episode I did where he sort of nudge taught this kid geometry,
Right,
and
yeah.
the kid gave wrong answers and he just sort of blew past it, and he's like, but wouldn't it be better if it was 8 and not 4? And the kid's like, okay. And he's like, see, he knew it already. So
That's Meno, right?
yeah, I think it's Meno. And so he goes back into that doctrine of recollection, and the quick argument to review is he's like, we have this notion of, say, something eternal like equality, right? What perfect equality is. But we've never actually seen that. We've seen 2 blocks of wood that look a lot alike, but the grain structure isn't the same. And if we cut them open, they'd look a little bit different. They have knots in different places. The same with stone, right? We're going to see veins in different places. And so we've never actually seen real equality, but we can imagine it. And because we can imagine it, we must be getting this knowledge from somewhere. So either it came to us at the point of our birth, right? When we were born, all this knowledge just popped into our heads, or we're simply remembering it because we've forgotten it because we've been reincarnated, right? So he has that little piece.
Okay.
The other piece is that he has a doctrine of opposites. So there's something like warmth and cold. So they're opposite. They can't be there together. But warmth comes out of cold, right? So if you have a warm, sunny day, you know it's warm because at one point you had a cold day. The same is true of fast and slow things, right? We wouldn't know fast except that we've seen slow things, and we wouldn't know slow except that we've seen fast. And they come from each other and generate each other. I can see someone going fast because a minute ago they were going slow. And I can see someone going slow because they were going fast.
Okay.
He says the same is true of life and death. So we can see life move into death, but we can't really see what death moves into. But life must come from somewhere. Otherwise, literally everything would die, and we would have no more life coming into the world. Okay.
I'm not sure I get it, but okay. Like, yeah. You buy this?
Oh, not at all.
Okay,
I think like this is a horrible idea.
Okay.
So I think what's happening is he is misunderstanding how biology works, that the way life comes from death is by taking inanimate material, food, and then eating that and then digesting that and making it into the building blocks of life. But that happens when something is already alive. There was a germ of life, and that life has continued in an unbroken chain until now, right? So is it possible that eventually that dies out and everything dies? Yes. He might be looking on too short of a timeline, and he doesn't really understand how, like, we pass on life. He thinks, something must spring into the child's like an inanimate child's body in a woman's belly from somewhere. And so I think it's partially a misunderstanding of biology, and also just a weird equality of things. Like, I don't know. So saying that, say things that rotate and things that don't rotate are opposites, and one comes from the other. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean there was a time when the Earth wasn't rotating or wasn't orbiting the sun, right? He leaves no room for something that is always moving fast, right? Or something that is always doing something. Does that kind of make sense?
Makes sense.
So I don't think it's a good doctrine. So, but for these two things, right? So
Cut him some slack. He's about to die. Poor guy.
sure,
Give him the comfort of immortal soul.
I just think he's got better arguments maybe coming later.
Will he make another argument for why the soul is immortal?
Yes, kind of. Okay. At least there's more talk of it because not everybody really buys this.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're on the same page.
Yeah, well, there are objections. They say, okay, you've proved that the soul that the soul came from somewhere.
Yep.
You haven't proved it will continue after
goes.
death.
Yeah, great.
Right? So we're remembering stuff that we learned before. Doesn't mean we're going to keep on going after. he says, well, if we combine this with my previous argument, we've proved that the soul should pass into life again after death because we have that whole like opposites generate out of each other. So from warmth comes cold, but from cold has to come warmth again. So life to death, eventually there has to be some life or else everything would just be die. This is where it gets more complicated for him. He says, okay, there are things that pass away and those things are like composite, soluble, things that are like put together or conglomerates. For example, and he says pure things don't. So like pure justice, pure beauty, the essence of things, these things don't change, but visible beauty does, right? So I can see a woman who is beautiful. She will eventually decay, right? I can see a coat that is beautiful. I can see a tree that is beautiful. I can see a landscape that's beautiful. It will all eventually change and be not as beautiful as it was before. But beauty itself does not. The things that don't change tend to be invisible. So like the essence of things, true beauty, true justice, we can't see any of those. The soul is invisible like those. It also rules the body. It commands the body and the body obeys. Therefore, it's more like divine things than earthly things. And when released, it won't be soluble and likely to pass away, right? A body, even just a body, will last for a long time after death. So the bones last for a long time. If you're embalmed, you'll last for a really long time. He even talks about like if you've had good habits, it'll last for a really long time. But the soul isn't like that. Like it'll last for a really, really long time. And this is where he gets into like weird metaphysics. He says souls that are tainted by earthly pleasures and desires will want to stay. So a philosopher, he's like, body sucks, I'm out.
Right.
I don't want this anymore. But anybody who's like, man, I really love Chinese food, is tainted by the body, and they're going to want to stick around. And so this is where ghosts come from.
He says that? Yeah. Wow, okay, cool.
They stick around, they're like, and they become visible, which is like a changeable thing. That's not great. We don't like visible things. We like invisible things. Or they go into animals that are like their own natures.
Wow.
So if I'm a tyrant, my soul, which wants to stick around, is not going to desire the things after death, is going to go in something like a wolf, right?
Wow.
If I am, say, a nice, happy, sociable person, I'll go and be an ant or a bee. And then if I'm, say, really energetic, I'll be a hummingbird. And then you are reincarnated as that, and then maybe learn and eventually get freed.
What if you really like Chinese food? What was that one?
Oh, like what would you? I mean, panda probably.
Okay, good.
Panda Express.
Yep.
Good.
So the real soul, untainted by the world, is released. And this is why true philosophers avoid pleasures. They fool the mind into thinking that the pleasurable or painful thing is real when it's not. They want to know the truth, so they avoid these things.
Wait. You're saying that the options are I could go off and live into the realm of like pure idea, or I could come back as a bee.
Yeah, that rules. Yeah.
I know. I'm not really sold either. Or I could come back as a freaking ghost. That sounds awesome. Clearly, Socrates would have judged me roundly.
That's fair. Yeah.
Buzz, buddy.
I know, right? We could both be bees.
Oh, my
How
word.
rad would that be?
That would be awesome. Get some honey.
Or like be wolves in the same pack. I can imagine being a tyrant reading this and being like, friggin' dope.
Yeah, you want to be a wolf?
Awesome.
Yeah,
cool.
Realm of ideas.
Yeah,
Take
exactly.
a round of that. Yeah.
Bunch of nerds.
Like hang out with pure justice? That sounds like it sucks. I want to like run down a hare in the middle of winter. That sounds amazing. Lead a pack? Very cool. Okay.
I once saw a pack of wolves take down an elk.
Wow. Are you serious?
Yeah.
You saw that?
I saw it. We through binoculars. We were at
Some park.
my family. We would always go out for Canadian Thanksgiving to a cottage in northern Saskatchewan. And one year, and this is in October, one year it froze. It had a big deep freeze, and a lot of the river and the lake was frozen over. And my dad saw sort of like commotion on the lake. And he's like, "What is that?" And we got our binoculars, and I saw this wolf pack chasing down this elk on the frozen lake. Wow. And they were just like, the elk was running and it was clearly tired, and the wolves were just like sort of cantering beside it and just like taking swipes at it, like bites at it.
Oh my gosh.
Until eventually the elk got so exhausted, fell down, and then the pack descended on it. It was wild.
It's crazy.
That must be, I mean, I don't think the
It's
elk maybe
horrifying.
felt this, but like, can you imagine running away from something and knowing that like, I should have done more cardio because your body is just failing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That's gotta be crazy.
not great. So,
I wonder who got reincarnated as an elk.
yeah.
Like what kind of constitution you have to have?
I I don't know, somebody that
Vegetarian?
didn't love running, I guess.
Like a couch potato.
Couch potato, yeah.
That sucks.
Although elk are pretty rad. Okay. His buddies don't buy this.
Okay.
They say, okay, well, sure. But there are other things that are also invisible that don't last. For example, harmony, right? Take an instrument, a lyre, right? You've got the composite
Riddle
thing.
me this, Socrates.
Yes. The composite thing that will pass away, the instrument, right? And you have the invisible thing that is unassailable, the idea of harmony, that will, like, that is something that's invisible, it's awesome, but the moment you break the lyre, that goes away. What if the soul is much like harmony?
Yeah.
Right? Where it is the thing that comes out of when a body is put together, but when you destroy the body, it's gone. Okay. Do you guys have answers for this? I know I'm asking you really hard questions. This is a tough quiz show.
Is it that like the harmony is like an example of it, but the concept of harmony lasts forever?
Yeah. Seems like it's just a bad example, right? Like he will disagree and say that what they're comparing it to is not similar to the body. That our idea of harmony pre-existed that lyre. I'm saying the same thing Graham did.
Yeah, so I think your response is actually better than the one he gives.
Oh, let's go.
In that you say, like, yes, but the essence of harmony remains, right? And I think Socrates often has this confusion where he confuses the idea of something with the reality of something, right? Like the idea of soul and actual soul, right? So yes, the idea of soul will live on, sure. Does that mean that a man's actual soul will live on? I'm not sure it does. He has that problem a few times. His response is threefold. Number one, he goes back to his doctrine of recollection, right? But we remember things, so clearly our soul was there before the instrument, and that's not the way that harmony works, right? So if you don't buy his whole we are just recollecting knowledge that we've previously had, then that argument doesn't really land for you. The second thing is that harmonies can be like some things are more harmonious and some less, right? Like what is a band you don't like, Donaldson? Like you'd say is less harmonious.
Less harmonious band I don't like. I don't know. I don't like Taylor Swift.
Okay, so you think Taylor Swift is maybe a little less harmonious. Who do you like, Nickelback?
Big Nickelback.
Look at this photograph. Big Nickelback fan. Let's go with what band do I like? Let's go with I don't know. We'll go with Radiohead.
Okay,
I like
great.
Radiohead.
So there's Radiohead. You've got these two things, and he says, okay, some
Polyphonic Spree. Remember those guys?
Oh yeah, they're so weird, like a band cult thing. Anyway, he says there's some harmonies that are more harmonious, right? You got your Radiohead or Polyphonic Spree, and then you have those that are less harmonious. You got your Taylor Swift, right? But if soul was like harmony, then some souls would be more soul than other souls. So what exactly would that look like? Would that just mean like virtue and vice?
Better people. Yeah.
Better people?
Yeah.
He's more so. But that's the thing is like, he's still
More real
he's
souls,
still a
yeah.
man. He's still a soul. He still has a complete soul. It's just maybe not
Less human. I don't know.
a great one.
Yeah.
I also don't think this is a great
It's not
argument.
great. Yeah.
Okay.
Socrates, we're kind of 0 for 3 right now.
Yeah. Finally, well, here's the 3.
Okay.
This one is actually a much better
Okay.
one. The soul directs the body and is often in opposition to it. So say you are like real hungry and all you see is a big plate of candy corns. You know that eating that would be a very bad idea.
Terrible idea.
Right? And
Yeah.
so your brain says, although
do
you
it.
are hungry,
Yeah.
we should not eat all these terrible candy corns. But your body really wants to do it. And so this is very different than, say, a lyre and the harmony, right? If your mind was it was generated by your body would be the one doing the directing. But it's not. The mind is the one doing the directing of the body. And so, therefore, it's not like that, right? It's not like when the body is destroyed, the mind goes too, because the mind is the one that's doing the directing, right? The soul is in charge. Harmony's never in charge of the instrument. I think this is a better argument as to the analogy.
There's like a distinction between them. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Like you cannot separate the harmony of the lyre from the lyre playing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. So far, he's still trying to prove that the soul is immortal.
Yeah.
There's one more guy that's like, I still don't buy it. And I actually find his argument, his objection, very good. He says, okay, look, say I've got a buddy. His name's Donaldson, right? Donaldson's a coat maker. He makes a lot of coats. right? And he wears them. He'll make a coat and he'll wear it for, say, a year,
Okay.
right? Well, Donaldson gets old and he kicks it, right? And then I go and I look at his
Story sucks.
and I look at his coat and I say, okay, he must still be alive, right? Because the man lasts longer than the coat, right? But he's not, right? The coat's still there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he is still there. And so he's saying, okay, granted, sure, we may have existed prior and we may exist after, but you haven't proven that what's really going on is that the soul is simply long-lived. And so we might go through a succession of bodies. We might have 10, 20, 50, but you haven't proved conclusively that the soul is actually irrevocably immortal, right? We might go through 1,000 reincarnations. That doesn't mean that this won't be your last, Socrates, right? I find that to be a very compelling one.
It's also hypothetical. I don't know what to do with it. Like, yeah, sure, that could be true. I don't know how Socrates must have a response, but I don't even know how you would.
Yeah. So here's his response. And this is probably the most confusing and complex one,
great.
so I might not fully understand it. So if you're a Plato supporter out there, you've got me. You guys following along so far?
Follow along.
Yeah.
Yep.
So far, how do you be? Let's just do a check-in. How do you feel about the immortality of the soul? Are you convinced?
Not so far. I mean, he's not doing so good, right? Like, he's gotten some pretty good pushback, and I'll be curious to hear this next one. But just from what Socrates is saying, I don't think he's really answered the question.
That like proven to you that the soul
yeah.
is immortal?
Doesn't seem like it.
So you don't buy the whole just you're like recollecting knowledge thing, and you don't
The
buy
more
the
you
whole
talk, the more I'm remembering from what I used to know from before. So I
good.
must be immortal.
The recollecting never really made a lot of sense.
or the coming out of opposites, like because there's death, there must be life, and so they generate each other. So we must be coming out of death, and that means that the soul is immortal.
No, that's silly.
Yeah.
I also think that's a little bit silly. Also because, like, yeah, even there he's making a mistake because warmth and cold, yes, they generate from each other, but it doesn't mean that when it's cold, there's any warmth
Going to be
left.
warm,
That's right.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
It
Doesn't
is
necessitate-
always hot in Texas.
Yeah.
Yes, there doesn't have to, or like
be-
absolute zero, right? At that point, nothing is moving. There is no warmth left. Yes, warmth will come back from it, but that doesn't mean that anything has remained during that period, right? Maybe energy. I don't know. Anyway, he doesn't do a good job here. So his answer is to tell this long story about how he got interested in natural philosophy. He's like, I wanted to know why things were the way they were. So I got looking into natural philosophy. So I looked at, why a tree grows and why when I put two things together, 1 + 1 is 2. And I got into all these things. And and this is, I think, why he ends up in the place he does as opposed to Aristotle, is that he's like, I became convinced that no one knew what they were talking about, right?
Yep.
So two things separately are one. They have the essence of one. How does their essence change when I put them next to each other? They're still one,
Yeah.
right? They each have an essence of one, but now they're supposed to have an essence of two? I don't really understand this. And say
There's a third thing.
say there's a third thing.
No, the third thing is them together is the third thing.
Okay, sure. You're blowing holes in his argument already, Donaldson.
We haven't even gotten through.
We haven't even gotten through. So he says, okay, say I've got two friends and one is greater and one is lesser, and it's by like about a head's worth of height, right? One's taller, one's shorter.
Like us.
Is it their heads that make them taller? No, that'd be silly. So he goes on to say, he's like, I don't understand why things are the way they are. And there was this guy that said he knew, and so I went to hear him. And so I'd be like, he says, if I was sitting here, that man, Anaxagoras, would have told me that the reason I'm here is because molecules make up my flesh, and then my flesh is bound together on my bones, and then my bones are there. And like he would have sort of described what I'm made of, but he wouldn't have told me why I'm actually here, which is that I've been condemned by the jury to death. He wouldn't have given me that answer. He's like, so I swept it all away. These idiots don't know what they're talking about. And he's like, the only cause for things is when they participate in a principle that is their true cause. So for example, things are beautiful when they participate in the essence of beauty, right? So this is why I think Plato has flipped that on its head. He says, I have to know the principles first because they are the causes for what our eyes see, right? If I know what the essence of beauty is, then when I see something beautiful, I know it is that way because it's participating in the essence of beauty, right? So he inverts like what Aristotle says, which is I need a depth of experience, and that is where I get my principle. He says, no, our principle is the cause for what you see with your eyeballs. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay.
Which is why you got to get out of the cave.
Which is why you got to get out of the cave. Okay. He also has a few other principles. So opposites cannot participate in essential opposites. So while water comes from snow and snow from water, heat and cold cannot admit of their opposites. So cold cannot admit of heat, heat cannot admit of cold, and they destroy each other. Same with something like odd and even, right? Odd will have no even with it. Like it won't accept it, right? The number 3, it would rather be destroyed than have any evenness in it. Same with the number 4. It would rather be destroyed than have any oddness. So they cannot, it will suffer annihilation rather than become its opposite. So heat will destroy itself before it becomes cold. You guys with me so far? Okay.
But if odds get an even, they're going to be still odd.
Huh?
If odds get an even, they are odd. So if an odd, like 3,
Plus 2.
accepts an even, like 2, they are still an odd.
But the 3 is not even. Like
The
that's
3 is...
like the 3 cannot be made to be even without destroying the 3.
Yes, that.
Gotcha.
Right? I can have a 4 hanging out nearby and still be odd.
Yeah.
But I will, like that 3 will never become even himself. And he says, this is true even of the qualities that it brings. So a 3 has his essential 3-ness, and one of his qualities is that he's odd. And so he would rather suffer annihilation than have that quality changed. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Okay. So he equates this to life and death. He says the soul, the thing that animates the body is the soul. Its opposite is death. And so the soul, because it is a life bringer, will not admit of death, but would rather retreat. So the very essence of the soul can never admit death, and so it is eternal, right? Does that kind of make sense? So
Sure.
like 3, it could never, it brings oddness. That's what it does. 3 brings oddness. So it can never admit of evenness. So 3 must be an eternally odd thing, just like the soul is an eternally life-having thing. Does that kind of make sense? Mm-hmm. What do you guys think of this argument?
But the 3 can be destroyed. Can't
Okay.
it?
This is, I think you've keyed in on exactly why I think this argument doesn't hold, right? Soul as an idea
Yeah.
cannot admit of death, right?
But individual tokens of souls can.
And that's the thing I
Yeah.
think he misunderstands.
Maybe soul as a type.
Soul as a type is a thing that is alive,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. But an individual soul, like an individual number 3, if I add something else to it, is now a number 4. That 3 is gone. The idea of 3 still exists.
Yeah.
The idea of oddness still exists. Sure, the essence of it's still there. But that 3 has died, right? And with him, I think he's doing this weird thing where he flip-flops between the essence of something, an idea of something, and the actual concreteness of it.
The token and type of it.
Yeah, the token and type. So my soul, even though it brought life to my body, when I die, maybe my soul is destroyed, but the essence of what a soul is, something that gives life, lives on. So the idea of soul is immortal. The token of soul can die.
Can die, yeah.
So I think he's wrong here. I think he does this a few times where he sort of flip-flops between the concrete and the theoretical.
Unless the
Like an essential
the
part.
the essential quality of soul is
is
immortality.
life. Yeah. In which case,
Then at which place then all the tokens are immortal.
they all inherit that attribute.
Yeah, and
of-
that actually may be his argument.
What does it say it again?
Is that the inherent necessary quality of soul is immortality.
So because we have souls, that
Yeah.
thing is immortal.
It's like the inherent essence of 3 is not immortality. The inherent essence of 3 is oddness.
Yeah.
But the inherent essence of soul is immortality. Therefore, the token
Okay.
souls
Are also
are
I can maybe
also
buy
immortal.
that.
So it's yeah. So yeah.
Again, this is a complicated bit, and he says like even odd and 3 and 2 so often it's hard to keep things straight. But
It's okay. Like this is maybe the best of the ones we've gotten. And are there any more, or is this?
that's it. This is I think his best argument.
Yeah.
If he is actually concocting it like Donaldson says he's
Wait. So
concocting
his conclusion is the soul is immortal because it's immortal.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bruh.
Yes, that's it. Okay. So we've
No
done
wonder
it.
they wanted to kill him.
The
Yeah.
soul is immortal.
But is this the one that ends with like it kind of doesn't matter, like whether I persist or not, like I lived a good life. Is that this dialogue or is that a different one?
It must be a different one. I don't think it's this one. He is fully convinced he's going to a better place and that the soul is immortal, so he's not worried about it.
Cool.
And he gets to like bother Ajax about justice and dying, as opposed to like talking to like
The people
like
here.
Anytus. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the rest of the dialogue is pretty strange. I mean, I know that like this is standard Plato Socrates stuff. And then the rest of the dialogue, somebody asks him like what Earth is like. He's like, let me tell you, buddy, it's weirder than you think. I have it on pretty good authority that we don't live only in a portion of the Earth, and the Earth is way bigger and way weirder than you think it is. And really, we're like frogs in a pond that live only on like one little tiny edge. But if we could bring ourselves to the surface and look at the real world, ooh, buddy, that'd be different. So he says if we could
Sounds awesome. I don't want to die now. I want to go explore that thing.
I know. So he says if we could swim to the top of our atmosphere, we would get a look at the real heavens and earth. And then he kind of does a weird description of how the rivers work. They like seesaw through the earth as like sometimes they flow in and sometimes they bubble back out and they kind of go back and forth between these two things. All of which is, some of it is kind of fun and accurate. Some of it is very strange. But what I found most interesting is that he gives a description that was very clearly taken by Dante, I think.
Oh.
So listen to this and see what you recognize. He's talking about the rivers. And he says, now these rivers are many and mighty and diverse. There are 4 principal ones, of which and he's talking about underground rivers, so all these things flow through the earth, of which the greatest and outermost is that called Oceanus, so the ocean river goes around the earth, which flows around the earth in a circle, and in the opposite direction flows Acheron, which passes under the earth through desert places into the Acherusian lake. This is the lake to the shores of which the souls of the many go when they are dead. And after waiting an appointed time, which is to some a longer and to some a shorter time, they are sent back to be born again as animals. The third river passes out between the two, and near the place of outlet pours into a vast region of fire, and forms a lake larger than the Mediterranean Sea, boiling with water and mud. And proceeding muddy and turbid, and winding about the earth, comes among other places to the extremities of the Acherusian lake, but mingles not with the waters of the lake, and after making many coils about the earth, plunges into Tartarus at a deeper level. This is called the Periphlegethon, as the stream is called, which throws up jets of fire in different parts of the earth. So, can you tell me about the rivers in Dante?
I cannot.
Oh, because you do Purgatory more than you do.
And we barely. Yeah, I haven't taught it in a couple of years.
Okay, so in Dante's Inferno, the outermost river is called the Acheron, right? Which is where the souls all kind of gather and then have to go over. The river of fire is the Phlegethon, which is where all the tyrants live, right? In this sort of like boiling blood. All 3 of these kind of go down to the very bottom. The 4th river, to go back to the text, the 4th river goes out on the opposite side and falls first of all into a wild and savage region, which is all of a dark blue color, like lapis lazuli. And this is that river which is called the Stygian River, and falls into and forms the lake Styx. And after falling into the lake and receiving strange powers in the waters, passes under the earth, winding round in the opposite direction, and comes near the Acherusian lake from the opposite side to the Phlegethon. And the water of this river, too, mingles with no other, but flows round in a circle and falls into Tartarus over against the Periphlegethon, and the name of the river, as the poets say, is Cocytus. And so that is like, for Dante, that's the very bottom. Right? So you have the 3 rivers, the Acheron, the Phlegethon, the Styx, the river of mud, and Cocytus, the very bottom. Such is the nature of the other world. And when the dead arrive at the place to which the genius of each severally guides them, first of all, they have sentence passed upon them, as they have lived well and piously or not. And those who appear to have lived neither well nor ill go to the river Acheron, and embarking in any vessels which they may find, are carried in them to the lake, where they will dwell and are purified of their evil deeds. And having suffered the penalty of the wrongs which they have done to others, they are absolved, and receive the rewards of their good deeds, each of them according to their deserts. But those who appear to be incurable by reason of the greatness of their crimes, who have committed many and terrible deeds of sacrilege, murders, foul and violent, or the like, such are hurled into Tartarus, which is their suitable destiny, and they never come out. Those again who have committed crimes which altogether great are not irremediable, who in a moment of anger, for example, have done some violence to a father or a mother, and have repented for the remainder of their lives, or who've taken the life of another under the like extenuating circumstances, these are plunged into Tartarus, the pains of which they are compelled to undergo for a year. But at the end of the year, the wave casts them forth, mere homicides by way of Cocytus, parricides and matricides by the Phlegethon, and they are borne to the Acherusian lake, and there they lift up their voices and call upon the victims whom they have slain or wronged to have pity on them, and to be kind to them, and let them come out into the lake. And if they prevail, then they come forth and cease from their troubles. But if not, they are carried back again into Tartarus, and from thence into the rivers unceasingly, until they obtain mercy from those whom they have wronged. For that is the sentence inflicted upon them by their judges. All right, and it goes on, but...
This is very silly.
Why?
Why?
Like, what does this have to do with the soul?
It doesn't, and he's just cooking stuff up. Like, at this point, it feels like he's just like, this is what the afterworld looks like. It's crazy. And I found it interesting just because, Dante
It continues on in the tradition.
Yeah, Dante very, very clearly just sort of wholesale lifted this stuff and put it into the Inferno. I never knew the source for that before. I thought he cooked all of it up, but a lot of it is just full on taken from here.
Yeah, interesting.
So if you're a big Dante fan, so I know a few of them in this school, then you might want to read Phaedo because there's a little bit at the end that's interesting. Cool. After this, Socrates, they come and tell him, hey, it's time to take your poison. But and he's like, oh, how does it work? And they say, well, you get up and walk around. After that, your legs get heavy and you lay down and the poison will take hold. And he's like, okie doke. They bring it to him and there's no ceremony. He just goes, okay,
just takes
pounds it.
Wow.
Walks around, lays
Doesn't
down.
he say something about like a buddy owes him money?
He says, I owe a rooster to Asclepius.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? And then he dies. And it's actually, reading it, and this is kind of silly, I almost teared up a little bit.
It's a little sad.
Like, it's a really kind of romantic, touching ending, right? Where everyone is there. They're all really weepy, but he is just living his life in full confidence that the soul is immortal, even though his arguments are not that great. and that he will live on a better life afterwards. So that's Phaedo. I feel like...
Is there something to that? Like, is there something to the fact that the arguments aren't all that great, but he still has the
Conviction?
the conviction and the faith in it?
That's bad, right?
Is it?
Yeah, it's a weak argument, but he still believes it. That doesn't seem like a good thing.
I don't think... Yeah, I think
but he has the right opinion. Like, the soul is immortal.
Okay, but why?
So what you're talking about is... wasn't it in Meno that we talked about, like, knowledge is either remembered but cannot be acquired, and it's just right opinion, and you sort of luck into it?
Yeah.
So in this way, Socrates is like the blessed, because he just sort of like...
got lucky.
He just kind of lucked into the right opinion, but didn't actually get there by the right roads. I think that's kind of wonderful.
That's tough.
I think so. I mean, it's like the right opinion comes from the people who've told you about something, right? Like, didn't we use the example of the person who told you about the shop?
They know what's right, but they don't. They've never actually been there themselves.
Yeah. They just have heard of it from people who have not been lying to them.
Yeah.
And anyway, I just wonder if Socrates is aware of that, or if he really does think his arguments are really good.
Well, I mean, I think not only he does, but everyone who was there was like, oh, yes, you are obviously correct. By the end, they're like, you've nailed it. The soul is immortal. I'm fully convinced.
Oh, okay.
I'm still not convinced by his arguments. Yeah. I think he does a lot of weird conflating. And this is like, and you know what, listener? So on one hand, I'm sort of sorry for having wasted your time with a bunch of bad arguments about how the soul is immortal. On the other hand, I think it's important to see the progression from Plato, who is just beginning to sort of search out real philosophy. They're all sort of stumbling around into something like Aristotle and then Thomas Aquinas, who builds this massive, like logical castle. So it's interesting to see the progression when they haven't necessarily fleshed out all the rules of logic yet. And then he sort of arrives. It
may be worth, listener, to go seek out AJ's episodes on De Anima, because that's where he talks about Aristotle's view of the soul.
Which we also found wacky, right?
Which was also very wacky. Yeah. So, I mean, just because it's a classic doesn't mean that it's something you should buy wholesale, but it's where stuff comes from in the Western canon. I think that's the other value to it, is knowing where Dante cooked up his Four Rivers from, right? Knowing that he didn't just come up with that off the top of his head. He sort of, this idea was in the ether already, and he just had to sort of take it and reapply it, and there you get another classic. So
cool. I like it.
Anyway, that's it.
Well, this has been Classical Stuff You Should Know. You can find us online at classicalstuff.net. You can find us on Twitter, X, whatever, CLSSCAL stuff. You can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/classical stuff, where we post our in-between episodes, which we record after every one of our episodes. We're going to record one of those right now. You can send us an email, theguys@classicalstuff.net, or give us a call. I'm going to give AJ's personal cell phone number right now. Get ready? No. Okay. This has been Classical Stuff. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.